stick around to the end of this video to find out about our free LUT giveaway. Welcome back to PDM Vlogs. It has been quite some time, I believe around about 5 or 6 months since we last uploaded to this channel. We've had a really busy summer working on music videos, on live performance videos, managing social media accounts, and a whole bunch of other stuff. But we finally have a bit of time to get back to this channel, and I thought it was high time to do a lens review. So anyone who has followed this channel or seen any of the videos before will know I'm a huge fan of vintage lenses. I use them a lot for my work, and sometimes any kind of narrative or music video, I will use them pretty much exclusively because I way prefer the look you get out of them compared to native lenses, which are good quality but just lack that cinematic kind of touch. So today we're talking about this, the Auto Chinon, or just Chinon 50mm f1.9 vintage lens. This is a Pentax Mount lens. I believe it was manufactured around about the late 1970s or early 80s. I couldn't get a definitive answer on Google, but I think it's around that time. It was designed for the old style 35mm film single lens reflex cameras, and is still pretty damn good today. It's fully manual, like all vintage, well, pretty much all vintage lenses, and also like cine lenses, which is why I really like using it. So this cost me a grand total of £16, and I think about £2 or £3 postage on eBay. And I'm pretty damn happy with that price, because for a modern day equivalent, I would have had to pay anywhere from 160 to 1600 plus, depending on what I wanted and what kind of coverage I wanted. So yeah, 16 quid, especially considering this can, in theory, well, it should be able to cover a full frame sensor, but I don't actually have a full frame sensor on any of my cameras. As I said, I'm micro four thirds. We do have a D810 within phase drive media, but that is about 3 hours drive in Northampton. So I'll have to, at some point, get a Pentax to Nikon mount, and we'll have to try it on that one. So on a GH5, being a 2x crop factor, this would be 100mm, but with this focal reducer, it becomes around about a 70mm. The depth of field on it is quite something. It's definitely not your usual kind of regular bokeh balls as they are. It's a bit more kind of weird, and I'll get back to that in a second. So I actually did do a mini review for this one 9 or 10 months ago, maybe actually, no, probably over a year ago now. And I really liked it then, but I thought, because I've used this for over a year now, it's about time that I reviewed this on its own. And considering actually since DSLR video shooter, different guy. Since DSLR video shooter did a video on the Chinon range, I thought it'd be good to jump on the bandwagon and review my one. So as far as cons go, there are not a lot of cons, but there are some. So it's not to say there's no cons, but there are few. The main thing is, it's a weird one. The focus ring is actually inverted. I've got some close-ups to show you. Whereas all my other lenses go one way to focus near or far, this goes the other way, which really throws me off when I'm pulling focus on a project and I have to remind myself. It's just something to keep in mind. The other thing, and I don't know if this is just a defect on my unit, but it's not smooth all the way through. Like, it gets to the sort of the far focusing. Sorry, I'm not very good with the terms. As you go further, it starts to get tighter, which is kind of, it's not too much of a problem, but it can sometimes, you'll sometimes be racking focus with that much force, and suddenly it's like, ooh. So it can be a little bit, it's just a few things to be kind of aware of, but it's not a big deal. So the other thing, of course, is that it is made of plastic and not metal. My other vintage lenses are all made of metal bar one, but the ones I mainly use are all made of metal. And I just kind of prefer, it feels a bit more premium, I feel better using it. But that being said, having looked at the reviews and the forum posts, I've actually heard that the plastic one is weirdly better built. I've got no confirmation on that one, that's just kind of hearsay, but it's worth noting that at least some people have considered the plastic one to be better built. But again, I would have preferred it to be made of metal. As with most vintage lenses, there is chromatic aberration. It's not noticeable a lot of the time, but especially in certain lighting situations, you will notice it, and depending on whether you're okay with it or not, it might be a bit of a deal breaker, or it might limit the way you use it. I personally am not that bothered, because I kind of like the sort of rough around the edges look, so to speak. But it is something to be aware of if you are using it. The other thing is, as with most vintage lenses, the sharpness, especially open at 1.9, is a little softer than what I'd like. Especially if, I don't know why you do this, but if you're filming sort of more in the distance, that's when you'll really notice it. Close up, not so much. If you're outside as well, it's worth stopping down to maybe, let me take my glasses off for this, probably about 3.5 or 4. Usually that's sharp enough for distance, but actually if you're in a studio setting or you're closer up, you can go all the way to 1.9 and it still looks pretty damn good. But 2.8 I think is the sweet spot for this lens. And the final thing, and this isn't a comment on this lens, it's just a comment on a lot of vintage lenses, you do lose some contrast, especially sort of shadow in. So you definitely have to add more shadows depending on the scene. It can work to your advantage, and you know, if you want kind of more of a washed out look, it can work quite nicely. I generally like to push the shadows a bit more to kind of give it a better overall look. But it's just, again, something to be aware of. If you are trying to match it to, say, a native lens, which we have tried to do before, you will notice the way there is a bit of a colour shift and there is a bit of difference in contrast. So just something to be aware of when you bring it into your editing system. So moving on to pros, and there are a lot more pros than cons as far as I'm concerned. So while it's certainly not as sharp as a native lens, that's actually not necessarily a bad thing. So if you watch any kind of big productions or filmed, you'll notice they're not actually as sharp as you might think. Especially stuff that's shot on film. It's always slightly softer, and I think it's a lot better to get it softer in camera than it is to add softness in post. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, the bokeh, the background blur and everything, is absolutely stunning. It's quite swirly, very reminiscent of the Helios 442. The difference being this is quite a bit cheaper, and the Helios 442 is not expensive, but 16 quid as opposed to about 40 or 50 quid normally on eBay over here. And it's kind of got this almost anamorphic look, which I really love. And off the back of that, you also get, it's not to everyone's taste, but you also get the blue lens flares, which I'm a big fan of. Sometimes you kind of have to tame them down a little bit, but the fact that these just naturally produce these really lovely lens flares is, again, another reason why. I mean, I deliberately try and get the lens flares, whereas some people might try and kind of hide them away. Now, love my lens flares, me. And the stuff you get out of this one is quite nice. This is ideal for things like wedding portraits. So when I shoot weddings, when we're going out and doing the portraits, depending on who I've got with me, I normally would have someone on a wide shot on a gimbal getting stuff, and then I'll go in at slow motion and shoot with this. And this is ideal for the portrait stuff to really separate the subjects from the background. This is also great for narrative work if you want to do more of a close-up on your characters. It, again, looks really nice. As I said, the background separation is ideal, and it gives that slightly dreamy effect, which is quite good for some situations, but not necessarily all. So it's worth picking your moments sometimes with this one. Again, as I mentioned, you can get some lovely shallow depth of field at 1.9, even on a regular adapter. So even if I'm using an adapter that kind of gives this the equivalent of 100mm, you still get nice depth of field. But again, paired with this focal reducer, the depth of field is stunning. And the extra thing, obviously, it's 1.9 anyway, but with an extra stop of light, that ends up being about a 1.4, which is pretty good for low light, considering the GH5, while not terrible, is not amazing in low light. So again, it's something to consider if you're looking for affordable low light options for your camera. And last but not least, I can't believe how small this thing actually is. Obviously it's a prime lens, but this lens can in theory fit a full frame sensor, as I think I might have mentioned. You know, obviously it's around about the same size as some of the smaller micro four thirds lenses, but my 12-60 is quite a bit longer even then. So you're not going to have any trouble with weight limits, especially if you're going on a plane or something. You could take a whole bunch of these and they're not going to get in the way at all. So I definitely recommend those for many, many, many reasons. And I'm sure there's many more things I haven't touched on as well. It goes without saying, but absolutely recommend buying this one. For the price alone of 16 quid, I guess that's about 18 or $19, maybe 20. You just can't go wrong with it. Like even if it's not quite what you're looking for, like, you know, that and a cheap adapter, even just a basic one, you'll still get some really nice results. I specifically found pairing this with the GH5 was a almost dream combo, especially because of the stabilization built into the GH5. I'm a huge fan of the image that comes out of vintage lenses. I think it looks a lot more filmic and cinematic than you would get off a native lens. Again, as I've said, not to say that native lenses are bad, some lenses are great, but specifically this one, you know, being the GH5 is not a depth of field king, and the native lenses, 3.5 to 5.6, you're not really going to get much depth of field. So this is a really good way of doing it without spending lots and lots of money. So I've currently got pretty much a full set of focals for my vintage lenses. I've got a 24, a 28, a 35, which I'll be doing a review of very soon, a 50 and a 135. I would love to get something a bit wider, like an 18 or 20, but those are quite expensive, especially for the Pentax mount. I'm considering looking at some M42 mounts next, especially for the old Helios. That seems to be kind of a must-have lens. But again, collecting these lenses is costing me a fraction of what it would to buy native lenses or Canon glass or Sony or anything like that. So this is just the way to go. And actually, as I mentioned, because these are laid out and these act a lot like cine lenses, just a lot smaller. I almost said silly. Cine lenses, just a lot smaller. Obviously with the aperturing on the outside, and you've got a full sort of 180 degree almost, you know, ring of motion. You know, it's just kind of, it makes sense. If you're doing anything that's narrative based, when you've got a bit more chance to set up shots, I'd 100% recommend these. These are probably not the best if you have to do super quick run and gun event stuff. I would always use a native lens for that. But if you have a bit more time to set up your shot, you just can't go wrong with these. You can use this, and I have used this, and I mentioned I have used this for client work, paid client work, and the results have been great and the clients have been happy. So yeah, I'd 100% recommend getting it and actually using it. This isn't just a toy lens. This is a proper lens, proper big boy lens. And you can get some great results with it. So if you stuck around this long, you must be interested in our free LUT giveaway. But first, I've got to tell you about our full new LUT pack that has just dropped on our Etsy store. So this LUT pack is cinematic LUTs for vintage lenses. It was designed with my GH5 using the Cine D profile, and of course, my vintage lenses and a focal reducer as well. This will work best, or these LUTs, this pack will work best with mirrorless and DSLR cameras using kind of a cine style profile and these sort of vintage lenses. However, it can also be adjusted to work with pretty much any native lens and almost any picture profile except for log. But if there is a demand for the log, I will look at adding that into future packs as well. The pack includes 8 different flavors, ranging from a warm and vibrant look to a colder, moodier look, and my personal favorite, Red Femme, which has a cooler color temperature but highlights the red tones, which is perfect for things like lipstick and apples as well, which is actually what this next shot is about. So I created this look over the summer for a theatre project I was working on. Really love the look, and I thought that had to be included in this pack as well. However, of course, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a giveaway. So within these 8 LUTs, I wanted to give one of them away, and the one I've decided to give away is called Dare. So I made this earlier in the year for a small fashion shoot that I did, and I loved the look, and I thought that that should definitely be included. So that will be available for free in the description below. It kind of adds a bit of mood, especially sort of in the shadows, a bit more contrast, and makes the colors pop a little bit. You can see some examples on screen now. I love the way it came out. Again, very filmic, which is, you know, always the goal. So give it a download, see what you think, let us know, and we'd love to see your results. And if you like it, then we would love if you bought our full pack. It's going for £9.60 on Etsy currently, and it helps support the channel. It means we can do more videos like this, and would be very much appreciated. And obviously feedback is very much appreciated because we are always trying to improve. So yes, let us know, and that'll be available. Well, that's available now, and the free download will be available for a limited time. I'm not exactly sure when, but I think it will only be for a few weeks, maybe a month at most. So get in there quick, download it, and let us know what you think. So thanks everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed our review, and I hope you guys enjoy our new LUT pack. We'll be back with more reviews and other sort of videos and stuff, hopefully a bit more frequently now. Obviously I can't promise that because things get busy, but my next video should be a review on another lens or possibly something else. Watch this space, stay subscribed, like if you like the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.